In the corridors of power, behind closed doors, and in the depths of every meaningful interaction, silence is a weapon, one that few understand, and fewer still know how to wield. Niccolò Machiavelli, the Renaissance master of political strategy and psychological dominance, understood silence not as absence, but as force. He saw it not as passivity, but as action cloaked in shadow. While the modern world rewards noise, speed, and opinions shouted through 1,000 digital megaphones, Machiavelli would quietly smirk in the corner, because he knew that those who speak less often control more. Imagine two rulers at a negotiating table. One speaks at length, projecting confidence, articulating plans, flattering, threatening, showing all his cards with the assumption that transparency equals strength. The other remains still, barely blinking, offering a few calculated words. Who holds the power? Machiavelli knew. It is the one who keeps their silence and forces the other to fill the void, to reveal themselves, to make the mistake of speaking too soon. Today, silence is almost feared. People rush to fill pauses in conversation, panic when a response takes too long, and associate quiet with weakness or disinterest. But those who dominate, who rule over minds, markets, or movements, know the truth. Silence is control. And if you don't master it, you're already giving away your power. Machiavelli, in The Prince, never said silence is power outright, but his words are filled with its echoes. He spoke of appearing virtuous while concealing your intentions. He warned against revealing your plans prematurely. He praised those who knew how to wait, how to allow time, ambiguity, and quietness to work in their favor. Silence, for Machiavelli, wasn't just a tactic, it was an art. And more dangerously, it was a test. The impatient always fail it. Consider this. In silence, you gain information. The more you speak, the more you reveal, not just facts, but emotions, insecurities, goals, and fears. Every sentence is a breadcrumb leading to your strategy. But when you're silent, people project onto you. They guess, they reveal, they fill the space you're holding. Silence creates discomfort in the weak, and in that discomfort, they betray themselves. There is a reason interrogation rooms are silent. There is a reason powerful CEOs allow awkward pauses in meetings. There is a reason ancient rulers sat silently on their thrones while others pled their cases in desperation. Machiavelli understood. The moment you speak, you give shape to your thoughts, and that shape can be used against you. In relationships, personal, professional, political, the silent one is mysterious. And mystery breeds fascination, interest, even fear. If people cannot predict you, they cannot control you. But if you always express, explain, defend, then you've already handed over the blueprint to your mind. And yet, silence is not the absence of communication. Quite the opposite. True silence speaks, it demands, it draws attention, it creates gravity. When used with intention, it speaks louder than any proclamation. The trick is to make your silence meaningful, not blank, but loaded. Machiavelli would advise, let them wonder why you're not speaking. Let them fear what you're thinking. Even in today's hyper-connected world, where algorithms reward loudness and visibility, silence holds value. Strategic silence. Knowing when not to post, not to reply, not to react. The greatest damage done to reputations, brands, and leaders today comes not from their silence, but from their inability to keep it. From tweets fired in emotion, to rants caught on camera, to confessions given in desperation to be liked or understood. The world watches, waits, and punishes those who cannot endure the silence. Silence also protects. It shields your intentions. It allows you time to watch others, to see who speaks when they shouldn't, to observe their strategies while concealing your own. As Machiavelli wrote, "A prudent man should always follow in the footsteps of great men and imitate those who have been outstanding." And among the great, the most dangerous, the most untouchable, were always the ones who revealed the least. Think about the most powerful people in history. The greatest generals, the most feared politicians, the most influential billionaires, they are rarely the ones explaining themselves. They are rarely the loudest in the room. They speak when it matters and are silent when it doesn't. That contrast creates impact. When you are always talking, nothing you say has weight. But when you speak rarely, each word is a hammer. Machiavelli also knew silence was not enough. It must be paired with perception. You must appear to be thoughtful, measured, watching, never disinterested. Silence without presence is useless. Silence with presence is terrifying. It's the kind of silence that makes people lean in, that makes them adjust themselves, that makes them doubt. In court, the defendant who says nothing often causes more speculation than the one who tries to explain away everything. In business, the negotiator who waits before responding controls the tempo. In war, the general who reveals no plans forces the enemy into over-preparation, wasted resources, and fear of phantoms. Silence distorts the battlefield. It multiplies possibilities. It hides the truth in 1,000 shadows. Machiavelli might ask, why give your enemy clarity when confusion is more effective? Why explain when implication creates more pressure? Why speak when silence will make them speak instead? There's a reason the lion and the fox were his favorite metaphors. The fox knows when to be silent. The lion knows when to strike. But neither wastes energy roaring without purpose. For Machiavelli, words were not tools of clarity. They were tools of manipulation. And the absence of them, even more powerful. When you speak, you bind yourself. You commit. You become predictable. But when you stay silent, you remain fluid, unreadable. In politics, this is survival. In business, this is leverage. In personal life, this is control. People fear what they do not understand, and they obey what they fear. But silence must be earned. It cannot be cowardice. It cannot be awkwardness. It must be sharpened. You cannot simply refuse to speak and expect respect. You must develop the presence, the gaze, the posture that says, I could speak, but I choose not to. That is the essence of power. Consider a king holding court. A subject speaks for minutes, praising, pleading, presenting ideas. The king listens, eyes steady, hands folded. Then silence. Not a nod, not a word. The subject panics, fills the gap, over-explains, contradicts himself. The king has said nothing, but he has learned everything. This is what you must master. Not silence as avoidance, but silence as examination. You become the mirror. You let others see themselves. And in doing so, you see more clearly than if you had spoken at all. Modern leadership books preach transparency, openness, vulnerability. But Machiavelli would scoff. Vulnerability is for the naive. Power lies in being unreadable, unpredictable. You do not win by being understood. You win by being feared, respected, calculated. If people always know what you're thinking, they can always defeat you. But if your mind is a fortress, protected by silence, they waste themselves in guessing. They make false assumptions. They walk into traps of their own making. Machiavelli's silence was not just strategic, it was theatrical. It created mystique. It made people need to hear what he had to say. And when he finally spoke, they listened with twice the attention, because they knew he spoke only when it mattered. That's the effect you must aim for. Reserve your voice, so that when you use it, it shakes the room. In every aspect of life, silence has currency. In relationships, it tests. In business, it builds leverage. In conflict, it controls the pace, but only if you learn to bear the tension. Weak people hate silence. They rush to fill it. They think it means something is wrong. They think it means they must act. But the strong use it to command. When Machiavelli observed rulers, he paid attention not just to what they did, but what they did not do, what they refused to say, what they let others believe. The true ruler does not correct every false perception. He lets the wrong ideas flourish when they serve his purpose. And this is the ultimate weapon. allowing others to believe they understand you, to let them make mistakes in interpreting your silence. Then, at the right moment, you strike, not with noise, but with precision, with calm, with certainty, because silence gave you the map. They think you are doing nothing, that you're indifferent, that you've stepped aside. But in your silence you are advancing, quietly, elegantly. The world around you moves frantically, reveals itself, exposes its fears, while you, anchored, observant, watch with calm precision. Machiavelli saw this not as patience, but as advantage. To wait is to let your enemies build the very structure that will collapse on them. Those who cannot wait are easy to control. They must speak, must act, must show. You, however, must learn the weight of timing, of doing nothing while everything unfolds, of letting silence do the killing for you. The fool exhausts his strength in expression. The wise man uses his silence as an executioner. In every conversation there's a game of dominance. The one who controls the silence, controls the interaction. The one who doesn't flinch, who doesn't rush to explain, has already forced the other to expose their hand. This is not manipulation. This is survival. And Machiavelli knew those who do not master this dynamic will always serve, never rule. To be silent is not to be passive, it is to be aware. In silence, your senses heighten. You see things others miss. You hear what others cover with words. Silence is a magnifying glass. It enlarges the movements of those around you, their body language, their hesitation, their tone, and it gives you the one thing no ruler can afford to lack: clarity. Clarity breeds control, and control is the root of power. But this is not control over others. It's control over yourself, over your impulses, over your need to be understood. Machiavelli would ask, must you be understood, or must you win? Because often those two are not the same. The need to be understood is a weakness. It is an emotional thirst. And like all thirsts, it can be exploited. The one who seeks to explain himself invites contradiction. The one who stays silent offers no target. You cannot argue with silence. You cannot debate it. You cannot twist it. It is a void too solid to be moved. This is why the greatest speeches in history were short, why the most terrifying threats were whispers, why the most decisive moments in power were delivered not with drama, but with silence wrapped around a single phrase. People remember silence. They do not forget the moment when the world went quiet, because something important was about to happen. The masses crave noise. Leaders must resist it. Let the crowd cheer, rage, protest. Let them react. That is their function. Your function is to observe, to intervene only when the outcome is assured. When Machiavelli studied Cesare Borgia, he admired not just his actions, but his restraint. He knew when not to act, when not to speak, when to let fear ripen in the hearts of his enemies until it fermented into collapse. There is power in silence precisely because it leaves space for imagination, and fear lives in imagination. People will imagine the worst when you say nothing. They will suspect you know something they don't, that you have plans they cannot see. They'll fear you more for what you might do than for anything you've actually done, and that fear, that's leverage. It is better to be feared than loved, Machiavelli claimed, not because fear is louder, but because it is quieter. It works in the dark. Love is expressed, fear is felt. And silence is the instrument that sharpens it. If you want to rise, to dominate, to lead, learn to close your mouth and open your eyes. Speak not to please, but to direct. Remain silent, not to withdraw, but to shape the room. Your silence should not be empty. It should be filled with intention, precision, presence. You cannot fake this. People know the difference between awkward silence and powerful silence. One is filled with self-doubt, the other with self-possession. You must build that presence in private by mastering yourself, your emotions, your urges to respond. That is the battlefield where silence becomes a weapon. This is why Machiavelli advised princes to study history, observe others, and avoid flatterers, not just to learn strategies, but to learn silence. History teaches timing. Observation teaches reading people. Avoiding flatterers teaches inner stillness. All are necessary to rule. But ruling is not only political. Every social circle has a hierarchy. Every workplace, every family, every negotiation, silence is your tool to rise in all of them. Say less than necessary, and others will think you know more than you do. Speak only when the outcome will shift. Let others waste their words. Yours must be reserved, like a precious currency. This is what the mediocre never understand. They speak constantly, trying to prove their worth, their intelligence, their kindness. But by speaking, they leak their desperation. They become transparent. And in that transparency, they become irrelevant. Machiavelli knew, to be respected, you must be enigmatic. The enigmatic one holds the room without forcing it. People are drawn to what they don't understand. Silence makes them chase you, ask questions, fill in the blanks. And in those blanks, they often reveal more than you ever could. But this requires discipline. Silence is uncomfortable at first. You will feel pressure to break it, to joke, to explain, to justify, resist. Every time you resist, you gain strength. Every time you speak unnecessarily, you lose it. Power is in perception. You do not need to be the smartest, only to be perceived as the most composed. And silence enhances composure. It gives your words weight, your presence gravity. The less you say, the more they remember it. Even in failure, stay silent. The moment you defend yourself emotionally, you lose composure. And once you've lost composure, you've lost positioning. Instead, let others comment. Let them criticize. Observe what they expose in doing so. Then, when the time is right, act without explanation. Silence is not surrender. It is ambush. Consider how kings walk, how CEOs enter a room, how chess masters think before they move. Not a sound. That stillness is not inaction. It is calculation. And that calculation is lethal. The modern world is built on distraction. Attention is fragmented. Speech is constant. Every second, people talk without purpose. In such a world, silence becomes rare. And what is rare becomes valuable. Scarcity creates demand. If you rarely speak, your words become gold. Your silence becomes platinum. You must make your silence louder than their noise. Not by overpowering it, but by standing outside it. While others play the game of opinions, you play the game of moves. You're not here to be heard, you're here to win. And sometimes to win, you must let them believe you've lost. You must let them speak over you, underestimate you. Because in that moment, they expose their strategy, their impatience, their ego. Silence gives them the rope. All you must do is wait. Machiavelli would tell you, never interrupt your enemy when he's making a mistake. But silence isn't just for enemies, it's for allies too. The ones closest to you must never know your full thoughts. Keep something back, always. Not out of distrust, but out of design. Complete transparency is suicide in politics and in life. If people know everything about you, they can control you. The more they know, the more they can hurt you. But silence keeps your borders intact. Your mind becomes a fortress. And in that fortress, you remain free. Freedom is not in expression. Freedom is in restraint. In choosing not to speak when you could. In deciding not to react when provoked. In standing still while the world rushes around you. That's real freedom. That's real power. You must learn to enjoy silence, to sit in it, to use it like a cloak. Wrap yourself in it. Walk into rooms not to speak, but to see. Every glance, every twitch, every breath, information. While they speak, you gather data. While they argue, you write conclusions. While they explain, you decide. And when you do speak, it is final. It is carved in stone. That's how you move from noise to voice, from background to axis, from participant to master. This is why Machiavelli was not just a political theorist. He was an architect of perception. He understood that people are not rational, they're reactive, and silence forces them to react. It creates a void, a tension, a psychological pressure, and that pressure reveals everything. Even in war, silence is strategy. A sudden quiet before an attack is more terrifying than the sound of drums. The unknown crushes morale. Silence is the fog that blinds your opponent until it's too late. But the silence must be paired with readiness. You must be able to act when the silence has done its work. Do not use silence to avoid conflict, but to prepare for it. The trap must be silent, but the spring must be violent. And yet, violence without silence is vulgar. Power without mystery is weak. You must earn your fear. You must design your respect. And silence is the chisel you use to carve your presence into stone. Most people seek attention. You must seek effect. Let others trend. Let them go viral. You go deep. You go wide. You build an influence so quiet they don't notice until it's too late. By the time they understand your silence, it's already over. You speak only when it changes the outcome. Until then, you wait. The room may grow tense. People will look at you, expecting words. They will push, provoke, even beg, but you remain still. Their discomfort is your signal. Their need for sound becomes your confirmation that silence is working. Machiavelli would not have admired the one who speaks often, but the one who speaks last. Because the last word frames the narrative. It writes the memory. It carves the outcome. The first word draws attention. The last word draws control. In a world where perception is reality, the final impression is more important than the initial one. Silence allows you to shape that final moment, deliberately. While others react instinctively, emotionally, prematurely, you wait, you aim, and then you strike. But not every silence is passive. The most powerful form of silence is active, strategic, loaded. You silence others not by commanding them, but by causing them to hesitate, to rethink. That's the mark of dominance, not making people submit, but making them stop. And sometimes, that is all you need. A second of hesitation in your opponent gives you the edge. A pause in their certainty gives you entry. Silence bends time. It turns seconds into pressure, into reflection, into vulnerability. You've already seen this. In arguments, when someone suddenly stops talking and the room freezes. In negotiations, when someone delays a response and the other side overplays. In leadership, when a figure simply listens and the team aligns instinctively. The silence is not the absence of command, it is the command itself. Machiavelli knew the most dangerous people are not loud. They are calm. They do not argue. They do not protest. They do not scream. They act. And they act once, not twice, not endlessly. Once, after all other voices have faded into noise. This is the rhythm of power. Speak briefly, wait, watch, decide, then execute. Silence is not just a social tool, it is spiritual armor. It protects you from reacting out of ego. It shields you from the poison of impulsiveness. Most people ruin themselves not because of what others do, but because they cannot control their own mouths. They announce their plans, they confess their doubts, they reveal their desires, and in doing so, they place the knife in someone else's hands. But you withhold, you study, you show enough to be understood, but never enough to be solved. And that gap, that mystery, is where your influence lives. Every time you speak, ask yourself, is this necessary, or is it vanity? Is it positioning, or is it insecurity? Would Machiavelli have approved, or would he have watched you in silence, knowing you had already lost? You must become silent, but never absent, present, but never predictable. There must always be more to you than what is seen. That is how fear is born. And fear, when calibrated properly, becomes respect. Even your allies must wonder what you're thinking. Not because you are disloyal, but because you are not emotional, because you do not waste breath, because you do not need approval. The man who speaks to be liked is already weak. The man who explains himself constantly is already submitting. You do not owe the world your thoughts. You owe yourself the discipline to guard them. True confidence is silent, not because it is shy, but because it is complete. What is whole does not need validation. What is sharp does not rattle. You are the edge of the blade, not the clanging of the sword. In war, the quietest moments come before the attack. In nature, the predator makes no noise until the kill. In leadership, the strongest move is often the one you don't make, because it forces the others to move for you. Machiavelli never romanticized silence. He saw it as a device of manipulation, yes, but also of structure. A man who cannot control his words cannot control his destiny, and a man who cannot hold his tongue cannot hold his throne. Your power, your position, your path, it depends not on what you say, but on what you withhold, on how well you delay gratification, on how masterfully you let others show their hand first. Let others believe they're ahead. Let them talk. Let them expose. Your silence is the stage on which they perform, and they will perform because they crave the spotlight. And while they perform, you prepare. Eventually, they will need your words, your approval, your judgment, and you will give it, not when they ask, but when it suits you. That delay creates hierarchy. You are not equal to those who need to speak. You are above them. You've proven it, not by noise, but by restraint. And restraint, when combined with clarity, becomes elegance, and elegance becomes intimidation. Because the world is not used to control, it is addicted to immediacy, to drama, to chaos. The silent man becomes alien, and what is alien becomes powerful. You don't speak to fit in, you speak to direct. You don't respond to every criticism, because not every voice deserves a reply. And you don't explain yourself, because a lion does not explain the roar he never used. Even in defeat, silence protects you. It preserves mystery. It prevents the opponent from understanding how close they were or how far. It denies them the certainty that could be used against you later. You must be feared for your potential, not just your history. And that potential is born from ambiguity. The most terrifying enemy is the one you can't read. That's who you must become. People chase noise because they fear irrelevance. But you let irrelevance chase them. Because in the silence, you are building, sharpening, planning. While they burn themselves under the spotlight, you remain in shadow, cool, calm, calculating. The spotlight is a trap. Noise is a trap. Noise is a trap. Attention is a trap. All of them steal your power by demanding your presence. But silence lets you move without being noticed, until it's too late for them to react. This is how kings rise. This is how empires are taken. This is how the invisible hand moves the visible world. Speak less, mean more. They still haven't mastered silence. But now, you will.